The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money by Keynes. The author believed that classical economic theory did not provide a way to end depressions. He argued that uncertainty caused individuals and business to stop spending and investing, and government must step in and spend money to get the economy back on track. His ideas led to a revolution in economic thought. He believed monetary policy would remedy an economic slump. This meant that the nation's central bank, the Bank of England, should lower interest rates and increase the money supply. These monetary measures were supposed to halt falling prices, boost industrial production, and revive hiring. The stock market crash of 1929 ended a frenzy of speculation that had driven up stock prices far beyond their real value. The US Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, had used monetary policy to rein in speculation by increasing interest rates. But the Fed's policy caused a sharp drop in consumer spending for major purchases such as automobiles and houses. Following the disaster on Wall Street, people began to withdraw their money from the nation's bank, causing many banks to fail and many depositors to lose their money. The Federal Reserve refused to pump more money into the banking system and even raised interest rates further in 1931. This made it more difficult for individuals and businesses to borrow and spend. The crash led to the Great Depression. During the 1930s, industrial production in the US dropped by nearly 50%. Unemployment reached 25% of the labor force. The depression quickly spread to Europe and around the world. Relying on monetary solution, most central banks cut interest rates and increased their monetary supply. Consumers and businesses, gripped by fear of the future, hoarded cash and stopped spending. Meanwhile, the US and other nations cut their spending and raised taxes to balance their budgets. Keynes feared that if capitalism did not find a way to address mass unemployment, desperate people might turn to communism or fascism. In 1932, Keynes began to argue publicly that the solution to mass unemployment depends on more, not less, government spending. This would require the government to borrow money and temporarily run a deficit. In uncertain times, businesses and individuals shy away from borrowing and lending money. Keynes argued that uncertainty brought on by a shock to the economy, such as the 1929 stock market crash, cripples effective demand. When uncertain consumers and investors sharply cut back on their spending, effective demands drop. Business lose confidence about future sales and income. Keynes argued saving was a good idea during normal economic condition, but it hurt the economy in a depression. In the 1970s, a spike in oil prices led to a dangerous combination of high inflation and unemployment. Keynesian economics did not seem to apply to this situation. Milton Friedman, a University of Chicago economist, stressed less government spending, little regulation of private enterprise, and lower taxes. Then things fell apart in 2008. Real estate values fell dramatically, spurring huge losses in banking and financial institutions and destabilizing the stock market. Business, along with state and local governments, cut wages and laid off workers. Unemployment grew to more than 10%. Millions of homeowners could not afford their mortgage payments, which led to increased foreclosures and further depressed real estate prices. Milton Friedman, best known for his monetarism theory, which states that changes in the money supply directly affect economic growth. Friedman challenged the Keynesian approach, espousing the idea that the government should stay out of individual affairs whenever possible, and that markets can solve economic problems much more efficiently than government officials can. Friedman provided the intellectual foundations for the anti-inflation, tax-cutting and anti-government policies of President Ronald Reagan and British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, an era of more disciplined central banking. It took Paul Volcker, who became Fed chairman in 1979, to put the monetarist theory into practice, adopting money supply targets that drove interest rates to double-digit level, sent the economy into a deep recession, and ultimately brought inflation down drastically. But unemployment eventually fell as well, proving that Mr. Friedman were right about the absence of a rigid trade-off between unemployment and inflation. What is opposite of Keynesian economics? Monetarism focuses on controlling the money supply to control the economy. Keynesian focuses on government spending to control the economy. Monetarist believes in fighting inflation by adjusting the amount of money in circulation. Here is a simple explanation of the Freedmen logic. When the Fed increases the amount of money in the economy, people's portfolios become unbalanced. Think of three kinds of assets: physical assets such as business equipment or household belongings, financial assets such as stocks and bonds, and finally money. An increase in the money supply leads people to say, I have got too much money relative to my physical and financial assets. The portfolio imbalance continues until the value of those other assets rises. Rising values of physical assets come from more assets or higher price tags on the assets, which means the economy is moving forward. Rising values for financial assets means lower interest rate.